Joe White, talking about Studio Geo. Joe is a geologist with over 5 years experience across several different fields, including exploration, open pit and underground mining. He has worked primarily on narrow vein gold deposits, but also has spent some good time on both lithium and iron ore. Joe's key focus since joining our team has been on the rollout of Studio Geo. He's been nagging some of you guys there to jump on board as early as possible. And he's been involved on, supporting the development team, testing, as well as documentation. And obviously, Joe is part of our technical team within Datamine, and he offers training, support, and general implementations for you guys out there. So, Joe, welcome.
Awesome. All right, thank you, Bruno, and thanks everyone for coming today. So the title of this presentation is Shapeshifting with Studio Geo. So that's what we're kind of trying to aim to do with Studio Geo. We're going to be able to create our wireframes implicitly and then kind of change them to the shapes that we want using all of our various options. So again, this is me, Joe. You might have seen me either on the help desk or potentially doing a demo. So my previous experience, I did a lot of work at underground gold mines, and I did quite a bit of modeling, helping my senior geologist at the time. So I'm well aware of the kind of, things that kind of trip people up when it comes to the implicit modeling side of things. So typically stuff like converting wireframes from one software to another, validating wireframes, and also trying to get that trade-off between, the speed of implicit modeling versus the kind of accuracy that you might see using the explicit modeling tools. So I think Studio Geo has got the ability to kind of do both things at the same time. It's a really good system. And I think it'd be a really good thing to have both for on-site stuff, like what I've done, and in the office as well. So this is just a slide on the mining value chain here that we have at Datamine. So as you can see down here, we've got the Mine Geology suite of softwares. We go all the way from our mapping. So this is kind of data collection using Studio Mapper. This will also be where your kind of samples are coming in. We then feed this raw data basically into Studio Geo, and this is where we're going to be doing our wireframing and our modeling process. Now, once we've gone through the modeling process, that's where we can start passing it off to our kind of estimation suite of softwares. So RM's probably the big one that most people use. There's also Supervisor and iCitus as well. So with our mining data stream, Studio Geo is meant to be a core part of this. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make the seams between the different softwares that we have as small as possible. So you can kind of seamlessly go through this whole process without having to do file conversions, without having to, change all your settings each time. So we've got up the very top, we've got our Fusion, which is basically our database software, and also Minetrust, which you might have heard a bit from Anthony. That's our file data lake, so where all of our kind of wireframe files and all of our technical files sit. So this all just feeds into Studio Geo, and in Studio Geo, that's where we're going to be actually building our wireframes and geological modeling. So there you go, that's a nice little graphic of the entire mining data stream that we have here. So why do we need Studio Geo? So while powerful, Studio RM's kind of environment doesn't lend itself to a persistent, dynamic, managed workflow. So I always like to say when I do training that Studio RM is basically a sandbox kind of program. You can do everything in whatever order you want. There's great things to that. That's why Studio RM is so powerful. However, sometimes you do want a kind of managed workflow that is repeatable each time. So Studio Geo is meant to deliver faster interpretation and quicker updates using this purpose-built environment. And because we have this deep integration with our other tools, there'll be a lot less issues with kind of double handling of our files. So if you were here last year, I actually presented a very early version of Studio Geo. So that was a pre-release alpha. So since then, we've actually had a whole lot of updates. So First of all, we've fully integrated the .dmx file format. So Håkon will kind of chat about this later. It's a new file format that we have. Studio Geo has basically been rolled out with this. We've been constantly improving the stability of Studio Geo, so better with handling larger amounts of data, shorter times for your model creation. We now have full macro integration, so every macro that's compatible with any of the other core software, so say from RM, is now also compatible in Studio Geo, and it can be included in the workflow that we'll see in a second. We can automatically create block models, so basically every time you create a wireframe, we can automatically create a block model that's kind of generated from these wireframes. So again, it's just time saving. You can have this all generated as part of the workflow. And finally, there's been many small usability improvements. This is just stuff like the layout and where buttons sit, that kind of stuff. So there's been a lot of work done the past year, and I'm very happy to say that it's now in a pretty good spot. So on the sales side of things, for anyone that's interested, the first official release was actually very recently, only on the 18th of July, so a couple of weeks ago. However, since then, we've done a lot of beta testing with selected clients. So this is just going through and getting feedback. I've done many client demos, so you've probably seen me at some stage, showing off the capability of Studio Geo. I've also created several models, so I've actually been using it to kind of do proof of concept for certain clients. So you can kind of see up in the top corner, I've got like a swarm of different domains kind of cross-cutting there. And finally, we do actually have multiple sales already, so around the globe and also some in Australia. Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is just a quick model creation, just so you've got an idea of how Studio Geo works, what it can do. I have cut out the loading times because I've only got so long on the slideshow. So I'm just going to narrate this. So first of all, we're going to start off with a small set of drill holes, and we're going to create a model based on this small set first. So this is just sorting our lithologies into two groups. And I'm just going to run it, and you'll see, ta-da, model pops up. So as you can see with this first version of your model, it's not super accurate. We've only used 20 or so drill holes. So we can see there that wireframe doesn't look particularly good. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to simulate us pulling in new data from our database. So we're going to pull in some more drill holes and then just rerun the model with the exact same rules. So there we go. We've got 80 or so drill holes there. And now without touching any of the settings, I can simply repeat that workflow again. I've set it all up in this bar to the left-hand side. Now, once we've done that, we can have a little look at how we would go about flagging some data. So if you want to put in a new domain into your model and then generate a model based off that data. So in this case, I'm just going to do a very quick and basic one, not particularly realistic, but you'll get to see how the tools work. So all I've got to do is I've just got to flag certain sections of my drill holes and then press that assign button. So you'd be doing this for your gold grades or nickel grades or copper grades. So once I've actually flagged two new domains, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up, click on my domain button there, which is basically how we create our individual models. Just going to sort them into their categories. And then when I press the play button, it's going to run and generate wireframes based on those intervals that we've selected. So two very basic domains. What we're going to do now is just have a little look through some of the settings that we have in terms of, how can we change our wireframe? The data's not always perfect. So what I'm going to do here is just click on the little cog. It's going to open up all of our wireframe generation options. The green dots are the footwall points, the red dots are the hangwall points. So here I'm just using a tool to turn off some points. Maybe the logging was wrong. There might be a slight issue with something there. So I'm just going to go through, turn off some points to remove some of these holes. So once I'm all happy with that, I can then go to the faults menu. So I've got some faults files in this data set. You can see there. So one good thing we can do in Studio Geo is we can apply our faults to one specific wireframe at a time, which is really good. So here we go. We've got our two faults there. And the final thing I might do is I might just change the boundary thickness. So it's just going to make the entire boundary 3 meters or so. Now, when I update it, this is what my new updated wireframe looks like. And you can see there, we've got a little bit of movement on those faults, not heaps. That's just automatically generated by Studio Geo. You can get more accurate depending on how many extra points you want to put in. Finally, I'm going to add a block model in at the end. So this is me changing the subcelling. So all of this is customizable. You're not stuck with the base options. When I run this, it will generate us a block model. So this block model will be filled with number one, our geology shapes, which is what we first created. It'll also be filled with our domain shapes that we've just flagged up. So that's what it looks like. Like I said, subcelling can be changed. All this is very customizable. And you'll see it's actually cut to the topo as well. So that's what the block model looks like just by default. And then the final thing that I do in this demonstration is actually just show how macros are integrated into the workflow. So it's a very simple process. You select your macro. It'll pop down there in your workflow. You can go through and actually change the options within the macro straight through Studio Geo. And so in this case, I'm actually turning off one of them and renaming it. So sometimes you don't want to run every sub routine of a macro, so you can go through and turn them off. And finally, with the macros, you're actually able to use the configure button up there, which allows you to move it around into different parts of your workflow. So you can have a macro run at any point that you like. Awesome. So as you'll kind of hear, one of our key focuses is Studio Geo as a kind of fix to the end-to-end kind of problem that we, had at Datamine. Like I said, we're making those gaps as small as possible between our different softwares. So some of the key focuses for Studio Geo are shared file format, so .dmx, which will be rolled out to all of our products over time. We've got customizable dynamic workflows. So this is where you can customize your workflow to be whatever you want and then have the ability to repeat it. Compatible with other Studio macros, like I said. So we can easily pull data directly from Studio Mapper if that's a product that you use. There's actually just a button. It's a one-click import. There's also direct connections to Fusion. So you can set up your drill hole importer to pull directly off Fusion or a number of other databases. And finally, when MineTrust is fully released, you'll also be able to store all of your data directly in MineTrust. So everything's going to be located on that ecosystem that we've built. So just finally, before I finish off, future features. Obviously, we're in the very first official release of Studio Geo. So there's a lot of stuff planned that is coming soon. So for our short-term roadmap, so these are the things that are currently being developed as we speak. We have additional wireframe creation methods. So we're going to have the grade shells and categorical modeling basically within our dynamic modeling workflow. So they currently exist, but they're not part of the workflow system itself. We're going to have batch editing of implicit modeling properties, so where you can change the properties of groups of wireframes at the same time. Improvements to the formatting and layout of Studio Geo just to make it more user-friendly, to make it easier to use. Nested modeling, so where we can create a model within a domain. So for example, if you've got a very complex ore domain, you might actually want to use that as the boundaries and get some fine detail in there using what you've got with face mapping or drill data. And finally, there'll be the option to actually save and load entire modeling workflows. So where you can actually save out your whole workflow at a time. In terms of the medium-term roadmap, so this is stuff that is not being actively developed, but it will be coming soon. We've got our stratigraphic specific modeling. So it's basically a stratigraphic correlation tool. If anyone's heard of or used Strat3D, it's going to be very similar to that. So we're not just picking up Strat3D and chucking it straight into Geo, but this is the kind of layout that we're going to have. So that bottom picture there, that is of Strat3D. So that's kind of something that you might expect. And secondly, we're also going to be introducing hybrid modeling tools. So this is actually tools that are going to combine both implicit and explicit. So this will allow us to kind of increase our control in very complex areas. So one thing we're going to be able to do is actually automatically link explicit wireframes. So if you add a string on to the end of your model, it will actually know to link that to an explicit wireframe. And finally, these tools will make it much easier to create pipes, folded units, that kind of thing, bifurcation. So these tools are all in progress, coming soon. That's some stuff that we can all look forward to with Studio Geo. So that's the end of my PowerPoint. Obviously, if you have any questions about Studio Geo, please come and see me. I've actually got my laptop set up just outside the door there, so if you aren't coming to the workshop tomorrow but do want to have a little look, I'm more than welcome to show you how it works. So thank you very much. And any questions about Studio Geo for anyone?